Hi guys, today we'll be discussing the 17 most repeated topics in physics JAMB exam. If you know the 17 most repeated topics, I don't think you should have any issues in your physics JAMB exam. Physics is a concept-based subject. Unlike some other subjects like biology, in physics you need to understand the concept behind something before you can solve that particular question. You need to know when to use certain formulas. For a particular question, you can have like 3 to 4 formula, you understand? But you cannot use each formula every time. You need to know how and where to use certain formulas, right? So for your physics JAM syllabus, there are about 39 topics in the physics JAM syllabus. But I've taken out time to pick the 17 most repeated topics out of these 39 topics. And I'll be explaining everything you need to know about these topics. So let us start with the first topic. The first topic you need to know is measurement and units. Under this particular topic, you need to know fundamental quantities and derived quantities. And you need to know that fundamental quantities are independent. They don't depend on other quantities to be formed. While derived quantities are also derived, or from the name derived, they are derived from fundamental quantities, right? You should know that examples of fundamental quantities, that's where you have mass, time, length, luminous intensity, amount of substance, current, and so on, right? And you should know the units. You should know the units of each of those quantities. Like the unit of time is seconds, the unit of length is meters, the unit of mass is kilogram, the unit of luminous intensity is candela, and so on and so forth. Also, you should know the units of derived quantities, right? You need to know the units of derived quantities like force, area, volume, pressure, and also you need to know the formula of all of these derived quantities, right? All of these formulas are quite important in order to solve questions in your physics JAM exam. Also, you need to know the different instruments that we use to measure different quantities, like the way we use stopwatch or stop clock to measure time, we use beam balance to measure mass, the way we use meter rule, micrometer, screw gauge, or vernier caliper to measure length, and so on and so forth. Ensure that you are familiar with these instruments. Like, what instrument do we use to measure current? You need to know all of these instruments in order to have a good score in your JAM exam. Also, don't forget to know the reading accuracies of different instruments, especially the instrument that we usually use to measure length. So that is that. Another important thing about this topic that JAM likes asking questions from is the concept of mass and weight. What is the difference between mass and weight, right? Mass is a fundamental quantity, while weight is a derived quantity, right? The unit of mass is kilogram, the unit of weight is Newton. Weight is a type of a force. Weight is a gravitational force. Like, weight is a type of force that is acting towards the ground, right? So the weight of a substance is different from the mass of a substance, right? The weight of the substance is usually gotten from the mass of the substance. That's why the formula for weight is W is equal to mg, right? Where m is mass and g is acceleration due to gravity. I believe you get that now. You should also know things like the weight of a substance vary from one place to another in the universe, right? While the mass of a substance is always constant. You should know that the mass of a substance is the quantity of matter in a body, while the weight of a substance is the Earth's pull on a body. So that's the difference, right? That's the difference. Weight is a vector quantity, while mass is a scalar quantity. I'm still going to explain all of this when I get to the second topic. You should also know that we use different instruments to measure weight and mass. We use beam balance or chemical balance to measure mass, while we use our spring balance to measure weight. Don't forget all of these things because they are important. You should also learn the dimension analysis using the MLT rule, right? Where M is mass, L is length, and T is time, right? You can always get the dimension of different formulae using dimension analysis. JAM likes asking questions from dimension analysis. You should also know that dimension analysis can help us to test the accuracy of equations, right? In the dimension analysis, the right hand side must always be equal to the left hand side if you get the dimension, right? So don't forget this. You should also learn how to get the dimension of different quantities, especially the derived quantities, because they like asking a JAM. Derived quantities like momentum, force, pressure, and so on. JAM will ask you. So don't forget, you should learn how to get the dimensions of all of these things. All of these things can always be learned in your textbooks. The next topic is scalars and vectors. Under this particular topic, you should know what scalars are and what vectors are, and also you must know the examples of scalar quantities and vector quantities. You should know that scalar quantities are quantities that have magnitude but no direction, right? While vector quantities are quantities that have magnitude and direction. They have both magnitude and direction. That's something you should know. An example of scalars are, you can have mass is a scalar quantity, distance is a scalar quantity, temperature is a scalar quantity, energy is a scalar quantity, and so on and so forth, right? And also under vector quantities, we have things like displacement, velocity, acceleration, momentum, force, and so on and so forth. So you should understand the differences between scalars and vectors. Also, when you talk about vectors, you should know how to resolute vectors. You should know how to add vectors together and how to do resolution of vectors, because these are questions you can see in your JAM exam, right? if you have two vectors, they might not even say it as vectors. It could be two vehicles that are moving in a perpendicular direction, just like this. And if you are asked to resolute the vector, that means you are getting the hypotenuse side of the right angled triangle. So in that way, you can actually use our Pythagorean theorem. You can use the Pythagorean theorem to get this resolution of vectors, right? And also, if you are to use the ones that are not perpendicular, or if you are given questions where the vectors are not perpendicular, probably something like this. One vector is moving in this direction and the other vector is moving in this direction. Two vectors, even three vectors safe. You can use the law of the parallelogram of vectors. You can use the law of parallelogram of vectors to solve that kind of equation. Don't forget. And also, you should learn the law of the resolution of vectors, right? Resoluting into vertical components and horizontal components. This way, if they give you different vectors, one moving towards this direction, another moving towards this direction, another moving towards this, even if they were 5, all you just have to do is to resolute all of them into vertical and horizontal components. And don't forget to know the formula of resoluting vectors into vertical and horizontal components. I will drop it somewhere around this video, right? So while talking about scalars and vectors, I said that the difference is just in the direction. Vectors have a direction. For example now, distance and displacement, they are almost the same. The only difference is that displacement has a direction, right? And also another example is speed and velocity. Speed and velocity, they almost have the same formula. The formula for speed is distance over time, while the formula for velocity is displacement over time. The difference in velocity is just in the direction. If you are to work with velocity, you'll be given the direction, if it is northward or eastward or northeastward, you understand? So the difference in scalars and vectors is the possession of direction by vector quantities. I believe this is very simple to understand. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is motion and Newton's laws of motion. Under this topic, you need to know the different types of motion that we have and the differences between these types of motion, like translational motion, vibrational motion, rotational motion, oscillatory motion, random motion, and so on and so forth. Under this topic as well, you must also learn about friction. You must know that friction opposes motion between two surfaces, right? You know, if surfaces are rough, the friction there will be higher than smooth surfaces. Those are the things you must learn. You must also learn the laws of friction. Also, you must know the formula for friction, and that is a general formula. I think that is F is equal to mu R, where F is frictional force, mu is the coefficient of friction, and R is the normal reaction, right? You should also know that the coefficient of friction does not have a unit. It does not have a unit. No, it is mu, right? And we have F is equal to mu R, right? So if you make mu the subject of the formula, you are going to be having something like mu is equal to F over R. And the unit of F is Newton, and the unit of R is also Newton. So Newton cancels Newton. So the coefficient of friction does not have a unit. These are questions you can see in your JAMB exam, and don't get them wrong because I'm telling you now. So the next thing you need to know are the equations of motion and the Newton's laws of motion. Newton's first law of motion, Newton's second law of motion, Newton's third law of motion. These are things you need to know, right? You should also know that Newton's first law of motion is also what we call the law of inertia, right? While the second law, we usually call it the law of acceleration, you understand? The first law of motion states that a body at rest or moving will continue to be at rest or in uniform motion unless being acted by an external force, right? So if an external force does not act on the body, on a body at rest or a body at uniform motion or a body in uniform motion, then that means there's not going to be any change on that body, right? You should know all of these laws, know the second law and also know the third law. You should also know the formula, right? You should know the formula to be V is equal to U plus AT, S is equal to UT plus RT square, V square is equal to U square plus 2AS, right? You must also know formula for force also, which is F is equal to MA. That is even a formula that was derived from the second law. That was how the second formula was derived, from F is equal to MA. These are things you should not play with at all. For the third law, you should know that for every action, there's always an equal and opposite reaction, right? Another thing you need to know about this topic is how to modulate the equations of motion into solving questions on motion under gravity. Under motion under gravity, the S, which means distance in normal motion, will be replaced with H, and even A, which means acceleration in normal motion, our linear acceleration, will be replaced with G, which is acceleration under gravity, under motion under gravity. All of these things are things you need to know. You should also know the value of G, which is acceleration due to gravity, which could be 10 meters per second approximately, or 9.8 meters per second square. You understand? It can be 10 meters per second square approximately, or 9.8 meters per second square, depending on how they give you in the question, because JAMB will always give you use G as this. You understand what I'm saying, right? So that is that about that. Let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is work, energy, and power. Under this topic, you need to know what work is, what energy is, and what power is. And also, you need to know the unit of work, energy, and power. The unit of work is joules, the unit of energy is also joules, and the unit of power is watts, right? You need to know the formula. What is the formula for work done? The formula for work done is mass times acceleration times distance. That is MAD, which I say work is mad. You can use it to remember anytime. Just say work is mad. The formula for work is MAD, right? And as I said before, that F, which is force, is equal to what? MA, right? So we can say that work is equal to force times distance, right? So that is why you see people defining work as, they say work is said to be done when a force moves through a distance, right? So the formula for work is force times distance, or mass times acceleration times distance. Or even if an angle is involved, you can use force times distance cos theta, right? Hope you get me. Also, the formula for power is work done over time taken. The formula for power is work done over time taken, right? So these are the things you must know. You must also know the kinetic energy and the potential energy. Talking about energy under this particular topic, and you must know the formulae for kinetic energy and potential energy. You should know that potential energy is the energy of its virtue of its position. The energy is stored, it is not moving, it is stored, and the formula is usually mgh, right? Why the formula for kinetic energy is half mv squared, and you know kinetic energy is a type of energy that is known by the virtue of its motion. It's dynamic, it is moving, right? So it is working. So the formula for kinetic energy is half mv squared. So these are things you should know. You should also know how to modulate between kinetic energy and potential energy. For example, if you talk about a simple pendulum moving from one end to another, you should be able to know when it's exercising potential energy and when it is exercising kinetic energy. All of these things are things you need to read in your textbook. So that is that about that. Let us move to the next topic. If you have been getting some things from this particular video so far, the best way to support this video is by liking, commenting if you have any questions, and subscribing to this YouTube channel. Subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification button so that you can get notified anytime I make any new videos, so you can learn from it. Another topic you must also know is machines and efficiency. Under this topic, you need to know different types of systems, like the lever system, the pulley system, the inclined plane, and so on and so forth. You must know the different types or the different classes of lever, right? All of these things are things you need to know. You must also know the formula to calculate the mechanical advantage, velocity ratio, and even efficiencies of different machines, right? Also, for example, now for mechanical advantage, we all know that mechanical advantage is load over effort. That is the formula, load over effort, right? Why the formula for velocity ratio is always distance moved by effort over distance moved by load. You know that velocity ratio can vary from machines to machines, right? The formula for calculating velocity ratio from a particular machine can vary from another machine. So these are things you need to learn. You should learn how to calculate the velocity ratios and the formulas. You must know the formulas to calculate the velocity ratio from one machine to another. You must also know the formula for efficiency. You should know that the formula for efficiency is mechanical advantage over velocity ratio times 100%. You can even replace the values of mechanical advantage, like load over effort, then divided by the velocity ratio depending on the machine, then multiply by 100%. Then you can get the efficiency of the machine, right? These are things you need to know if you want to pass your JAMB exam and if you want to get questions on machines and efficiency. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is heat and temperature. Under this topic, you must know what temperature is. Like, the temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of a body, and also you must know the different temperature scales, right? You must know the scales like Celsius scales, the Fahrenheit scale, and even the Kelvin scale. You must know the intervals between all of these scales, right? And you must also know how to convert each scale to another scale. You understand? You must know how to convert like Kelvin to Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit to Celsius, Celsius to Kelvin, and so on and so forth. Because JAMB can test your knowledge on how to convert from one scale to another scale, right? You must also learn what a thermometer is, right? We know thermometer is the instrument that we use to measure temperature. You must also know the different types of thermometers that we have, like, for example, the liquid in glass thermometers, like the ones that is made of alcohol or even mercury. All of these things are things you should know, right? You must also know the characteristics of a good thermometer. For example, a good thermometer should be accurate. A good thermometer should be sensitive. A good thermometer should also be calibrated, right? Sensitivity, accuracy, and calibration, and some other things. But these are the things that you need to know about temperature and even the thermometer, right? So moving on to heat, you should know that heat is a form of energy, and you should know the formula, right? You should know things like heat capacity. You should know things like specific heat capacity. You should know the formulae of all of these particular things, and you should also know the definition. For example, now when you hear something like specific, it means like 1 kilogram of a substance, right? You should know things like latent heat, right? Latent heat. You should know things like latent heat of fusion. You should know things like latent heat of vaporization. You should know things like specific latent heat and specific latent heat of fusion and specific latent heat of vaporization. But anytime you hear specific, just know it is 1 kilogram, right? So all of these things are things you should know. Know the units because the units differs, right? And you should also know the formulae because you can be asked questions on all of these things. Also, you must learn how to convert different scales of temperature because you are going to be needing all of these things under this particular topic. Still under it, you must know the modes of heat transfer, conduction, convection, and radiation. You must know that conduction is always in solids, while convection is always in fluids. When I say fluids, you should know that fluids means things that can float. That means I'm talking about liquids and gases together. While radiation is always in a vacuum. Radiation is in a vacuum, right? So these are things you should know about this particular topic in order to find questions from this particular topic easy in your JAMB exam. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic you must know is gas laws. Under gas laws, you must know different gas laws like Boyle's law, Charles' law, Gay-Lussac's law, or Pressure's law, Avogadro's law, ideal gas equation, and even general gas equation. These are things you should know under gas law. You should also know the relationship between different entities under these particular laws. For example, now for Boyle's law, we all know that Boyle's law tells us the relationship between volume and pressure of a fixed mass of a gas. It tells us that the volume of a fixed mass of a gas is inversely proportional to the pressure, and it gives us a formula of V1 over P1 is equal to V2 over P2. That is for Boyle's law. For Charles' law tells us the relationship between the volume and the temperature of a fixed mass of a gas when the pressure is constant. Don't forget, in Boyle's law, temperature is constant. Now in Charles' law, pressure is constant. And the formula for Charles' law is V1 T1 is equal to V2 T2. These are things you should know. Also, you should know the Gay-Lussac's law or the pressure law, which tells us the relationship between the pressure and the temperature of a fixed mass of a gas when the volume is kept constant, right? The formula for this one is P1 over T1 is equal to P2 over T2, right? You must also know the Avogadro's law, right? Avogadro's law. Also, you must know the ideal gas equation. Ideal gas equation is PV is equal to nRT. Also, you must know your general gas law, which combines the Charles' law, the Boyle's law, and the Gay-Lussac's law, where you have something like P1 V1 over T1 is equal to P2 V2 over T2. All of these things are things that you can get asked in your JAMB exam. Also, you must also know the formulae of pressure. The formulae of pressure. We all know that pressure has the formula of force over area. You must know that. You must also know the different units of pressure because pressure has different units. Pressure can be measured in atmosphere, it can be measured in bar, it can even be measured in Newton per meter square, and so on and so forth. So these are things you should know about this particular topic. So that is that for that. Let us move to the next topic. The next topic is electricity and circuits. Under this particular topic, you must know Ohm's law. You should be able to state Ohm's law, and you should know the formula of Ohm's law. You should know that the formula of Ohm's law is V is equal to IR, right? And you should know things like how to calculate the effective resistance or the total resistance when resistors are in parallel or when resistors are in series, right? For example, when resistors are in series, that's if they are like this in series, we can just add the resistances together to get the effective resistance. For example, if you have 1 ohm, 2 ohms, and 3 ohms together, they are connected in series. 1 ohm, 2 ohms, 3. You just have to add 1 plus 2 plus 3. That will give you 6 ohms. That is the total resistance of that particular circuit. For example, if you have resistors in parallel, you should know that you need to use the formula for parallel resistance or to calculate the total parallel resistance, and that is 1 over R total is equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2 plus 1 over R3 and so on and so forth, depending on the number of resistors. So that is how to calculate resistors in series and in parallel. That is one thing you should not forget in order to pass your JAMB exam. Also, you must know the formula for energy and also the formula for power. But the formula for energy is equal to E is equal to IVT, right? IVT, where I is current, V is voltage, and T is time. And the formula for power is IV. The formula for power is IV. So that tells us that another formula for energy is equal to PT. That's power times time, right? So you can also derive some other formulae for energy and also for power from the Ohm's law, right? We know the Ohm's law is V is equal to IR. So if you just keep substituting some values, you can get other equations for energy and also other equations for power. For example, another equation for energy is equal to I square RT, right? Another equation for power is I square R, and so on and so forth. Or even V square RT for energy, or V square over R for power, and so on and so forth. So you must learn how to substitute equations into other equations in order to get different formulas to solve in different situations, right? So when you talk about circuits, you should know that we have two types of circuit. We have the AC circuit and also the DC circuit. AC circuit is alternating current, right? And DC circuit is direct current. Alternating current, which means the word alternating means changing. The The type of lights that we use in our houses or households are alternating currents, because it changes over time, right? But the direct current is direct, and that is usually what we found in batteries, right? So you should also learn to read under AC and DCs, right? You will also learn about capacitors, inductors, and so on and so forth. I'm still going to explain under one of the topics because I actually separated capacitance and inductance as a different topic under this video. Also, under this topic, you should know the factors affecting the resistivity of a substance. Factors like length, presence of impurity, cross-sectional area, and even temperature, right? So you should know all of these things. Also, you should know the formula for resistivity, right? The formula for resistivity, we usually say rho. We represent rho with resistivity is equal to Ra over L. So if you see any question in your JAMB exam asking you to calculate the resistivity of the material, and they gave you the resistance of that material, and they gave you the cross-sectional area, or they might not give you the cross-sectional area, they give you the length. So you can use the length to calculate the area all over L, right? So the formula is Ra over L. That is the formula for resistivity. So that is that for that. Let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is magnetism and electromagnetic induction. This topic is a very simple topic, and under this topic you must know the basic magnetic laws like poles repel and unlike poles attract. This is the first thing you must know because this is very simple. It's just the basic law of magnetism, right? Also, in this topic, you must learn the Fleming's left-hand rule, which is for motor. Also, you must learn the Faraday's law, which causes an induction in the EMF of a coil. All of these things are simple things you must know in order to pass your JAMB exam and also to answer questions on this particular topic. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is capacitance, capacitors, inductance, and inductors. So under this particular topic, you need to know what a capacitor is, and you need to know what an inductor is, right? You need to know what a capacitor is made up of and the function of a capacitor. And you need to know the factors that determine the capacitance of a capacitor, right? You must know that one of these factors is the length or the distance between the two plates that form the capacitor. And also, you need to know that the area of the plate matters in determining the capacitance of a capacitor, right? You must also know that the electric or the material in which the dielectric is made of determines the capacitance of a capacitor, right? You must also know the formula of capacitance. I think that C is equal to Q over V. These are things you need to know. Also, you need to know the effective capacitance of different capacitors arranged either in parallel or in series. For example, this is the pure opposite of resistance. It is the pure opposite of resistance. In resistance, I said that if the resistors are arranged in series, you just add them directly. For capacitors, if the capacitors are arranged in series, you are going to add them inversely. Like you are going to be having something like 1 over CT. When I say CT, I mean the total capacitance, right? Is equal to 1 over C1 plus 1 over C2 plus 1 over C3 and so on. That's why you do it in series for capacitors. But why in parallel for capacitors, you add them directly. It is the opposite of resistors, right? You add them directly in order to get the total capacitance. For example, if one capacitor is attached to another capacitor, and so on, in parallel, all of these capacitances will just be added directly. You understand? So it is the opposite of resistance. Also, know inductance. Know the formula to calculate inductance. Also, know the formula to calculate capacitive reactance. Know the formula to calculate inductive reactance. Know the formula to calculate impedance. All of these things are necessary for you to know to solve questions on this particular topic. If you have not read this particular topic, go and get your textbook and read them because JAMB usually likes asking questions from this particular part. They can tell you that what is the capacitive reactance of so. What is the impedance? So all of these things are things you need to know how to calculate and also know their formulae. So that is that for that. Let us move to the next one. So the next topic is Introduction to Electronics and Semiconductors. Under this topic, you need to know what semiconductors are, right? You need to know that semiconductors are between conductors and insulators. Semiconductors conduct electricity under certain conditions, and they only allow small amount of electricity to pass. And you also need to know the different types of semiconductors or examples, like silicon, germanium are example of semiconductors, and we have some other ones as well. You must also know the difference between the P-type of semiconductor and the N-type of semiconductor. You need to know that the P-type semiconductor is the positive type of semiconductor and the N-type is the negative type semiconductor. I need to know the examples of all of these types of semiconductors. These are things you need to know. You know that semiconductors are usually used in electronics. They are usually used in electronics, right? And you must know that examples of semiconductors that we have are diodes, transistors, and even integrated circuits, just like ICs, right? And also you must know the uses or the importances or the functions of these semiconductors. For example, now, diode can be used as a rectifier. When I say a rectifier can always be used to convert an AC to a DC, right? I told you guys that AC is alternating current, and this is the direct current, and this is the type of current that we have, like direct current in batteries that can be used in most electronics. And the AC is the type of a current that we use in our household homes, the one that PACN is supplying us with, right? So you need to charge your phone, right? If you charge your phone, you're actually imputing AC current. So when you put AC current, it needs to be converted to DC current, and that is done by the work of a rectifier, and that is what a diode does, right? So that is what we call rectification, because diodes only allow the movement of current in one direction. It allows the flow of current in one direction. So a diode can act as a rectifier. Also, you must also understand the concept of doping in semiconductor. These are things you need to know in order to pass your JAMB exam. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is waves and sounds. I cannot make this video without talking about waves, because JAMB likes testing questions on waves. And you all know that wave is a very, very large topic, right? So under wave, you should know what waves are, right? You should know what waves are, and you should know the different types of waves that we have. Like generally, we have the mechanical waves and the electromagnetic waves. You know that the mechanical waves are the ones that actually require a physical medium. They require medium for propagation, right? Why electromagnetic waves don't require medium? They travel in vacuum, right? So these are things you should know. You should know that waves are actually divided into two: the longitudinal type of waves and the transverse type of waves. You need to know the directions and how these waves are moving. You must be able to differentiate between this type of waves in order to pass your JAMB exam. These are questions that JAMB can actually ask you. You must know the difference between the trough of a wave, and the crest of a wave. You must know different terminologies in the wave. Also, you must learn different wave equations in order to use them to solve. Like, let me give you an example now. For an example, we have V is equal to F lambda. That is a very, very general wave equation. Where V is equal to velocity, F is frequency, and lambda is the wavelength, right? These are things you should know. And also, you should know what a wavelength is. These are very, very simple things that you should learn. Talking about sound, you should learn about resonance or sound waves. These are things that JAMB can actually ask you in your JAMB exam. Check your textbooks and read on sound waves, because they can actually set questions from there. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is light and optics. I believe you all know what light and optics is about. It's about light and optics, like optics, how we see, right? This is a very, very simple thing, because you need to understand this particular topic, light and optics, is supposed to be part of wave, because it's also part of wave normally, light wave, right? So under this particular one, you must know different things. You must know the law of reflection, the law of refraction. You must know what reflection is. You must know what refraction is. You must even know Snell's law. Snell's law is sine I over sine R, right? You must know glass. You must know what a glass is. You must know what a mirror is. You must know what a lens is. All of these things are things you need to understand. You need to understand the dispersion of light. You need to understand the principle of convergence and the principle of divergence of light. All of these things are simple things you need to know. Also, you must learn defects of the eye, because it's also inside our physics textbook. It's there. You must learn about the defects of the eye, like the myopia, the hypermetropia, the presbyopia, conjunctivitis, and so. You must also learn the corrections of all of these defects of the eye, right? You must also learn the dispersion of light. You must also learn about the rainbow. How are the colors of the rainbows formed? I believe you all know that the colors of the rainbows are formed by dispersion of light, the dispersion of white light, right? So all of these things you should know. You should also know that light is unidirectional. That's what we call the rectilinear propagation of light. Like, light travels in straight directions, right? These are the things you need to know about light. You must also know about the refractive index. Refractive index and the formula, and how to calculate all of these things are quite important. You must also know the mirror and the lens formula, because you can be given questions on these particular ones, because JAMB like asking questions on them, where you'll be talking about the focal length and also the distance of the object and also the distance of the image, right? Where you use the formula 1 over F is equal to 1 over U plus 1 over V. This formula is very, very important. It talks about the mirror and also the lens. You can use it in either cases, because these things are very, very important. You must learn the positions of objects when the mirror is at a particular position. You must learn the position of the image when the object is at a particular position and when the mirror is at a particular position. These are necessary things you need to learn about optics and light. These are things you should check your textbook to learn about, because JAMB likes asking questions on optics to be specific. They like asking questions on optics, mirrors and lens. So that is that about that. Also, under this topic, you must also learn magnification. You must learn the formula for magnification, like magnification of the object and the image, right? Is it going to magnify or is it going to become smaller? You will always get this using the formula. So you need to know all of these things in order to pass your physics JAMB exam. If you have been gaining from this video so far, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, because that is one of the best ways to support me. So let us move to the next topic. So the next topic is circular motion. Circular motion is a very interesting topic. Under this topic, you must know things like centripetal force, centripetal acceleration, angular velocity, angular acceleration. All of these things are necessary things you need to know. You must also know their formulae because these things are important. For example, now the centripetal acceleration or the centripetal force. Let's use centripetal force. Centripetal force is a type of a force that keeps an object in motion. If you hold an object like a sling now, if I hold a sling and I'm rolling the sling in circular motion, centripetal acceleration or centripetal force is the force that keeps the object moving or that keeps the object in a place or in a position where the object will not be swinging away from the position or from the range at which I am actually rolling it. That is what centripetal force does. You understand? Even the earth is held by a centripetal force, right? It is held, the earth is usually in motion. The earth is usually in motion. So the centripetal force holds the earth from moving away from its orbit. So these are things you should know. You should also know the formula for centripetal force. The formula for centripetal force is mv squared over r. Mv squared over r, right? While the formula for centripetal acceleration is v squared over r. As you know, I told you guys that the formula for force is ma, right? And if the formula for centripetal acceleration is v squared over r, that makes the formula for centripetal force to be mv squared over r. So these are simple things that you should know about circular motion. Don't forget, know about angular velocity, angular acceleration, and know their units because all of these units are important in order to solve questions in your physics JAMB exam. So let us move to the next topic. The next topic is gravitational field. Gravitational field is very simple. You need to know the Newton's law of universal gravitation, and you also need to know the formula. Like the formula is GMM over R squared. These are things you need to know. You need to know how to calculate gravitational potential because you need to know the formula, right? Also, you also need to know different things. You need to know escape velocity and its formula. There are different things you need to learn about this topic, and just do them and know the formula, and you'll be fine with this topic. Let us move to the next topic. The next topic is elasticity and Hooke's law. Under elasticity and Hooke's law, you need to know Hooke's law and how to state it, and also the formula. You should know that the formula for Hooke's law is F is equal to KE, right? Where F is force, K is the constant, and E is extension, right? Hope you are following me. So now, you should know that Hooke's law states that provided that the elastic limit of an elastic material is not exceeded, the extension is directly proportional to the force, right? So the force must be directly proportional to the extension. As the force is increasing, the extension will also increase, right? Where K is the constant, or what we call the stiffness, right? Also, under elasticity, you need to know Young modulus, you need to know tensile stress, you also need to know tensile strain. Tensile stress has its own formula, tensile strain has its own formula, and Young modulus also has its own formula. These are things you should read and understand because JAMB likes asking questions from this particular part. So let us move to the next topic. The next topic is atomic structure and kinetic theory. Under atomic structure, you need to understand how atoms are formed. You need to understand what subatomic particles make up the atom. You need to know that the protons and the neutrons are in the nucleus and the electrons are in the shell, right? Also, you must also understand the concept of kinetic theory of gases. You should know that gases are always in motion, right? You must know some gas laws, which I've already said at the beginning part of this particular video. You must know Boyle's law, Charles' law, and some other things. You must also know the changes in state of substances, like from solid to liquid, from liquid to gaseous, from gaseous to liquid, and so on and so forth. You need to know the terms for these particular changes. For example, now, from liquid to gaseous is what we call boiling, right? Is what we call boiling, or we call it evaporation. But there's something you need to know about this. There's a big difference between boiling and evaporation. JAMB can ask you this thing because JAMB likes asking, because boiling happens at a particular temperature. For example, now water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, right? But evaporation happens over a wide range of temperature. Evaporation can be happening at 20 degrees Celsius, right? It can also happen 50, 60. But boiling happens at only one distinct temperature. It can be distinct or a range, just one small range of temperature. That's where boiling happens, right? For different substances. So these are things you need to know about this. So don't forget, this is another topic. I actually said 17 topics, but I think I need to add this topic to make it 18. And that topic is going to be SHM, simple harmonic motion. JAMB likes asking questions on simple harmonic motion, and under simple harmonic motion, we have different formulae. A lot of formulae you need to learn about simple harmonic motion, and simple harmonic motion is more of understanding. You need to understand things in simple harmonic motion. You need to understand the formulae and how to use them in different situations. I hope you have gained from this video. If you have gained from this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. I wish you guys the best in your JAMB exam, and that's it. Bye bye.